Russia could cut diplomatic ties with UK, Foreign Ministry to RT. British involvement in Ukrainian terrorist attacks inside Russia can't be ruled out in overall relations. The severing of diplomatic ties with the UK would be an extreme measure, but Moscow could end up taking the step considering London's significant involvement in the Ukraine conflict, the Russian Foreign Ministry has warned. The Wall Street Journal reported last week that UK special forces from the British Army's SAS and SRR regiments and the Navy's SBS units are operating very close to the front lines in Ukraine. British personnel are not directly involved in the fighting with Russian troops, but their guiding influence on Ukrainian Special Forces activity is evident in the sabotage operations Ukraine has conducted against Russian railway, airfield, fuel, and other logistical nodes, the U.S. outlet claimed. RT addressed the Russian Foreign Ministry for comment on the article, asking if Moscow could verify the WSJ's claims and, if confirmed, whether this could lead to the severing of relations with Britain. In a reply on Friday, the ministry said it was well aware of consistent efforts by London aimed at providing military assistance to the neo-Nazi regime in Kiev. The UK's support includes the supply of domestically produced and foreign military hardware to Ukraine, the training of Ukrainian troops in Britain and elsewhere in Europe, intelligence sharing, consulting support, and likely participation in the operational tactical planning by the Ukrainian military, including sabotage, other operations, direct provision of cybersecurity, and deployment of mercenaries, the statement from the ministry read. We can't rule out that the British participated in the planning, organization, and support of terrorist attacks carried out by the Kiev regime on the territory of Russia, including through the provision of intelligence information, it added. The ministry noted it had summoned British Ambassador to Moscow Deborah Brainerd last autumn, following the Ukrainian naval drone attack on Russian vessels in the Crimean port of Sevastopol last autumn. Russian diplomats voiced a strong protest to Brainerd over the active participation of British military specialists in the training and supply of units of Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, including for carrying out sabotage operations at sea, it said. Russia reserves the right to respond to such conduct by the UK at a time and place of its choosing, the ministry added, asserting that all responsibility for the consequences of London's destructive activities rests entirely with the masterminds and perpetrators of those reckless acts. Regarding the possible severing of diplomatic relations with London, this is obviously an extreme measure that can't be ruled out when taking into account the totality of all factors, the ministry warned. She vows to tighten ties, strengthen cooperation with DRC. Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday held talks with President of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, Felix Antoine Tshisekedi Tshilombo, with both sides vowing to elevate the bilateral relationship to a comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership. Bilateral cooperation in various fields has yielded fruitful results in recent years, and China has been the DRC's largest trading partner and source of foreign investment for many years in a row, she said. The two sides have forged a close community of shared interests and shared future, she said. He expressed the belief that China's high-quality development will provide more cooperation opportunities in a broader market for the DRC and promote greater development of bilateral relations. China will, as always, help the DRC in its economic and social development, support its industrialization strategy, strengthen cooperation in energy, mining, agriculture, infrastructure, and manufacturing, and tap the potential of cooperation in the digital economy, education, and health, she said, adding that China is ready to send agricultural technology experts to the DRC. China hopes that the DRC will provide policy support and service convenience for Chinese enterprises to invest and do business in the DRC and foster a fair, just, and safe business environment, he said. She said China is ready to strengthen coordination and cooperation with the DRC in multilateral affairs, jointly practice true multilateralism, and uphold international fairness and justice. Noting China is the world's largest developing country and Africa is the continent with the largest number of developing countries, she said China and Africa have always been a community with a shared future. China firmly supports Africa in pursuing an independent development path and becoming an important pole in the world's politics, economy, and civilization, she said, adding that China is ready to provide new opportunities for African countries with its new development. As for his part, Tshisekedi appreciated China for its assistance and valuable support to the DRC's economic and social development over the years. The DRC firmly adheres to the One China policy and firmly supports China's efforts to achieve national reunification, Tshisekedi said. The DRC is willing to work with China to deepen cooperation in economy, trade, resources, infrastructure, medical care, and other fields, enrich the connotation of the comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership between the two countries and build mature, stable and groundbreaking relations for the benefit of the two peoples, Tshisekedi added. Kazakhstan not planning to create, join any union state for now. Kazakhstan does not intend or plan to create or join any union state, Ruslan Geldibe, the press secretary of Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, said on Friday. Tokayev took part in a plenary session of the Eurasian Economic Forum, an annual business event of the Eurasian Economic Union, EAEU, in Moscow on Wednesday. The president then said that there are different levels of integration within the EAEU, recalling that the Union state of Russia and Belarus is a part of the EAEU. Regarding our country, Kazakhstan does not intend and does not plan to create or join any union state, Geldibe said on social media. The secretary said Russia and Belarus indeed demonstrate a higher and closer level of rapprochement. This is a unique precedent. As the head of state noted, in fact, we are talking about one people and one state. And in this regard, it is very important to share the initiatives of the two integration projects that have absolutely different goals, he added. Geldibe said Tokayev's key message is that the integration within the EAEU can and should exclusively follow the economic path. As the president noted, economic integration is not an end goal but one of the means to develop economies and improve the well-being of our peoples. That is, any decisions made within the framework of the Union should bring results to each individual participant and, above all, to the citizens of all EAEU states, the press secretary said. Biden, McCarthy appear near to deal on U.S. debt ceiling as default looms. U.S. President Joe Biden and top congressional Republican Kevin McCarthy on Thursday appeared to be nearing a deal to cut spending and raise the government's $31.4 trillion debt ceiling, with little time to spare to head off the risk of default. The deal would specify the total amount the government could spend on discretionary programs like housing and education. The two sides are now $70 billion apart on a total figure that would be well over $1 trillion. The two sides met virtually on Thursday, the White House said. Representative Garrett Graves, the top Republican negotiator, told reporters on Thursday evening that conversations would continue into the night. Republican negotiators have backed off plans to increase military spending while cutting non-defense spending and instead backed a White House push to treat both budget items more equally. Biden said they still disagreed over where the cuts should fall, noting that I don't believe the whole burden should fall back to middle-class and working-class Americans. Graves told reporters that the White House is refusing to negotiate on work requirements for anti-poverty programs, which he called crazy. He said disagreements over funding Social Security and Medicare versus work requirements remains an issue between the two sides. House Speaker McCarthy told reporters Thursday evening that the two sides have not reached a deal. It is unclear precisely how much time Congress has left to act. The Treasury Department was warned that it could be unable to cover all its obligations as soon as June 1st. But on Thursday said it would sell $119 billion worth of debt that will come due on that date. Any agreement will have to pass the Republican-controlled House of Representatives and the Democratic-controlled Senate. That could be tricky, as some right-wing Republicans and many liberal Democrats said they were upset by the prospect of compromise. I don't think everybody's going to be happy at the end of the day. That's not how the system works, McCarthy said. The House adjourned on Thursday afternoon for a week-long break, and the Senate is not in session. Lawmakers have been told to be ready to come back to vote if a deal is reached. As per reports, the deal would only set broad spending outlines, leaving lawmakers to fill in the blanks in the weeks and months to come, and it would specify the total amount of military spending, which has been a key sticking point in the talks. Biden has resisted Republican proposals to stiffen work requirements for anti-poverty programs and loosen oil and gas drilling rules, according to Democratic Representative Mark Takano. Representative Kevin Hern, who leads the Republican Study Committee, said that a deal was likely by Friday afternoon. Queen Elizabeth faced assassination threat in U.S. FBI. Newly released documents detailed an ever-present danger to the British monarch. A trove of newly released FBI documents has detailed an alleged IRA plot to kill Queen Elizabeth while the British monarch was on a state visit to the U.S. in 1983. The documents, which are viewable in the FBI's online vault, following their release on Monday, claim that federal agents received credible intelligence of threats to the Queen's life when she and her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, were visiting California 40 years ago. According to the documents, a San Francisco police officer received a call from a man who claimed his daughter had been killed in Northern Ireland by a rubber bullet following a meeting at a bar. The bar in question was described as being frequented by sympathizers with the Provisional Irish Republican Army. The decades-old intelligence adds that the man threatened to harm the monarch either by dropping some object off the Golden Gate Bridge onto the royal yacht Britannia when it sails underneath, or would attempt to kill Queen Elizabeth when she visited Yosemite National Park. The U.S. Secret Service intended to close the walkways on the bridge in San Francisco as the yacht neared, the documents say, although they make no mention of security arrangements for the Queen's visit to Yosemite. No details of any arrests related to the investigation were noted. Another document in the 103 pages released by the FBI, which were shared following a Freedom of Information request by U.S. media outlets, shows that a man faced legal proceedings in 1976 for flying a small plane over New York with a sign which read "England, get out of Ireland," while the Queen was visiting the city. In 1989, an internal FBI memo also detailed what documents referred to as an ever-present threat towards the British monarchy from the Irish Republican Army. IRA. While in 1991 the Secret Service was warned that Irish groups were planning to protest en masse against the Queen at a baseball game she planned to attend along with then-US President George H.W. Bush. The Queen's second cousin, Lord Mountbatten, was assassinated by an IRA bomb in County Sligo, Ireland in 1979. Claims about Chinese hacking Kenyan government false, Kenyan official. A senior Kenyan security official refuted claims of a Reuters report which said Chinese hackers carried out cyber attacks against the Kenyan government since 2019, noting the allegations in the article lack authoritative evidence of their existence. In a statement released on Thursday, Dr. Raymond Omolo, the Principal Secretary for Internal Security and National Administration, said no conclusive verification has been provided by relevant officials from either the Kenyan and Chinese governments in the article, which was initially published on May 23, 2023, and updated the next day. The article should be viewed as sponsored propaganda. The wide circulation and the alacrity for its attribution by other foreign media with well-known inclinations further hint at a choreographed and concerted attack against Kenya's sovereignty, said Omolo. In the article, Reuters reported that the hacks, targeting 8 of Kenya's ministries and government departments, were suspected of being conducted by a hacking group sponsored by China, citing Kenyan intelligence analysts and a cybersecurity firm in the United States. Omolo argued in the statement that it was unreasonable for the key ministries to be hacked by third-party hackers from China, as most of the critical networking infrastructure deployed by Kenya is sourced from the country. It is reasonable, therefore, to contemplate that if the country of origin desired to infiltrate the same systems it has helped install, it would unlikely engage third-party hackers, Omolo said. Omolo added that Kenya's cybersecurity infrastructure is formative, and this portends inherent high-risk exposure to cyber threats. He said the necessary precautions that are under constant review to match the dynamic nature of the threat's landscape have been deployed. Behind groundless accusations, the Chinese embassy in Nairobi also dismissed the claims made by the report, terming them as groundless, far-fetched, and sheer nonsense. Hacking is a common threat to all countries, and China is also a victim of cyber attacks. China consistently and firmly opposes and combats cyber attacks and cyber theft in all forms, a spokesperson said in a statement from the embassy, adding that it is a highly sensitive political issue to pin the label of a cyber attack to a certain government without solid evidence. In addition to Reuters' article, U.S. tech firm Microsoft Corp also published a report on Wednesday, saying a hacking group known as Volt Typhoon has gained access to infrastructure organizations in Guam and elsewhere in the U.S. The company said the group is sponsored by China and had been active since mid-2021, with the likely aim of upending communications during a future crisis. China has rejected the baseless claims from the extremely unprofessional report, describing it as a patchwork with a broken chain of evidence. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning told reporters that similar alerts have also been issued by intelligence agencies of the U.S., Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, members of intelligence alliance the Five Eyes. The Five Eyes is the world's largest intelligence organization, and the National Security Agency, NSA, of the U.S. is the world's largest hacking organization. Mao said the joint warning issued by the U.S. and its allies is a collective disinformation campaign with geopolitical purposes, adding that the U.S. is in fact the empire of hackers. Investigation reports released by Chinese institutions last September accused the U.S. of using 41 specialized cyber weapons to launch more than 1,000 attacks on Northwestern Polytechnical University in China's Shaanxi province. The investigation, conducted by China's National Computer Virus Emergency Response Center and Chinese Internet security company 360, uncovered the technical characteristics, tools, and methods of the attacks, which were traced back to Computer Network Operations, CNO, a cyber warfare intelligence gathering unit of the NSA. The U.S. has not yet offered a response on the matter. U.S. South Korean military exercise simulates attack on North Korean forces for sake of peace. The joint military exercise conducted by the U.S. and South Korean forces involved the deployment of hundreds of troops and dozens of tanks, artillery systems, and aircraft. Washington and Seoul have once again demonstrated exactly how much they care about peace on the Korean Peninsula by holding a massive live-fire military exercise on South Korean soil right next to the border with North Korea, a country well known for such moves as antagonistic and provocative. During the exercise, the U.S. and South Korea deployed some 2,500 soldiers and 610 items of military hardware such as tanks, artillery systems, attack helicopters, fighter aircraft, and drones, according to a statement issued by the South Korean Defense Ministry and disseminated by media. The drills involved simulated strikes against North Korean frontline assets, ostensibly in response to an attack, with the South Korean Defense Ministry boasting that their aim would be to bring peace through overwhelming strength. The military exercise in question became the largest of the so-called Combined Annihilation Firepower drills, a series of drills that have been held since 1977. North Korean media has already branded the drills as a typical North Korea targeted war rehearsal and promising that there will be consequences, delivering these remarks last week before the actual start of the exercise. The United States and South Korea have a long-standing tradition of holding joint military exercises around the Korean Peninsula and then acting surprised when North Korea does not appreciate such moves on its doorstep. At least one media outlet has already observed that Pyongyang usually reacts to such drills with missile and other weapons tests, apparently suggesting that it will be no different this time. PM urges Australians to be on right side of history on Indigenous Voice. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has appealed for people to be on the right side of history in the referendum for an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Friday marked the 6 years since the Uluru Statement from the Heart, a petition that called for the Constitution to be changed to establish the voice, was first unveiled by more than 250 Indigenous delegates. A yes vote at the 2023 referendum is a chance for all of us to take the next step on the journey to reconciliation, Albanese said in a media release on Friday. To be counted, and heard, on the right side of history. Addressing the parliament on Thursday, he defended the Voice proposal from criticism and ruled out change to the word of the referendum, which is expected to be held late in 2023. If successful, the referendum would establish the Voice as a body that would advise the federal parliament on issues relating to Indigenous Australians. Albanese, a strong proponent of the Voice, called for non-Indigenous Australians to imagine they were on the other side of the disparity faced by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Imagine your brothers and sisters are likely to die a decade younger than the general population. Imagine your daughter is more at risk during childbirth and your grandchild more at risk of infant mortality. Imagine your son statistically more likely to go to jail than university, he said. Imagine all of this, and then imagine that after generations of being sidelined and ignored, you are finally given an opportunity to change it. To be heard. The Prime Minister on Friday said next week the constitutional alteration is expected to pass the House of Representatives, one step closer to a referendum to recognize Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples through a voice to Parliament in Australia's founding document. South Korea approves Ukraine arms transfer, WSJ. Seoul has claimed the Wall Street Journal report was partly inaccurate but declined to specify further. South Korea has agreed to send hundreds of thousands of artillery shells to Ukraine under a confidential arrangement with the United States, the Wall Street Journal reported. The move would mark an about-face for Seoul, which has been reluctant to authorize lethal aid to Kiev. Under the reported agreement, South Korea will first ship the munitions to the U.S., which will then forward them on to Ukraine, sources told the WSJ on Wednesday. Seoul and the Pentagon have so far declined to confirm the transfer, though both acknowledged ongoing talks on the issue. However, South Korean Defense Ministry spokesman Jeon Hak-yu said there were inaccurate parts in the WSJ report during a press briefing later on Wednesday, though did not specify further. There have been various discussions and requests, and our government will take appropriate measures while comprehensively reviewing the war and humanitarian situation in Ukraine, Jeon said. While South Korea initially announced it would send munitions last November under another behind-the-scenes deal with the U.S., it later got cold feet after the agreement was reported in the media, American officials told the outlet. At the time, Seoul reportedly feared the decision would violate its policy against providing anything beyond non-lethal aid to Ukraine, though officials were also hesitant to deny a request from Washington, a close ally. Since then, the Pentagon has scrambled to meet Ukraine's massive demand for shells, even tapping into US-owned weapons stocks in Israel, Germany, Kuwait, and South Korea to make up for the shortage. The White House has authorized the transfer of more than 2,155mm shells to Kiev since the conflict with Russia escalated last year, exhausting U.S. stockpiles. South Korea's alleged reversal comes after President Yoon Suk-yeol visited the U.S. Capitol last month, where he vowed to support Kiev and take all proper measures in order to uphold the international norms and international law. He gave no indication that Seoul would approve transfers of artillery rounds, however. The journal suggested the supply of deadly munitions by South Korea would allow U.S. officials to put off the provision of American-made cluster bombs, which Ukraine has repeatedly requested throughout the conflict. Human rights groups have criticized the use of such weapons, as they often leave behind undetonated bomblets which pose a hazard to civilians, sometimes even years or decades after a conflict is over. They are banned by more than 110 nations under a 2010 treaty, though the US, Ukraine and Russia are not signatories. UK, US, Australia hold AUKUS first AI military tests, UK Ministry of Defence. The United Kingdom, Australia, and the United States have held military trials of artificial intelligence technology within the AUKUS Cooperation Pact for the first time to track and detect military targets in a representative environment in real time, the UK Ministry of Defence said on Friday. The work saw the initial joint deployment of Australian, UK and US AI-enabled assets in a collaborative swarm to detect and track military targets in a representative environment in real time. Accelerating the development of these technologies will have a massive impact on coalition military capability, the Defence Ministry said in a statement published on the UK government's website. The military tests have been organised by the UK's Defence Science and Technology Laboratory and achieved world firsts, including the live retraining of models in flight and the interchange of AI models between AUKUS nations, the statement read. Autonomy and AI will transform the way defense operates. The strategic environment is rapidly evolving, meaning we must adapt our technologies at pace if we are to maintain our operational advantage. By sharing AI, and the underpinning data to enable it, with one another, Australia, UK, and US militaries can access the best AI, reduce duplication of effort, and ensure interoperability, the document also said. The AUKUS Advanced Capabilities Pillar, also known as Pillar 2, is a trilateral program including different cutting-edge technologies and capabilities to promote security and stability in the Indo-Pacific region, according to the UK's Defence Ministry. AUKUS is a trilateral security pact between Australia, the US and the UK signed in 2021 which envisages the US and the UK supplying, among other things, nuclear-powered submarines to Australia. Serbia urgently moving army to Kosovo frontier, Minister. Belgrade's move was triggered by the latest clashes in the breakaway province of Kosovo. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has placed the National Armed Forces on high alert and ordered units to move towards the administrative line dividing the breakaway province of Kosovo from the rest of the country. The move comes following clashes between police and protesters in a majority Serb town in the region on Friday. An urgent movement of forces to the Kosovo border has been ordered, Defense Minister Milos Vučević confirmed in a TV broadcast, adding that it is clear that terror against the Serb community in Kosovo is continuing. Vučević said the security of Serbs in Kosovo and Metohija was being threatened by the region's ethnic Albanian Prime Minister Albin Kurti. He called on citizens to remain as calm as possible and not to fall for provocations. Earlier in the day, Serbs in the town of Zevakin had clashed with police as a newly elected ethnic Albanian mayor prepared to enter his office following local elections. The votes in 4 municipalities had been boycotted by the majority Serb residents who had sought more autonomy and representation and regarded the votes as an attempt to seize the Serbian municipalities by illegitimate representatives. Turnout in the vote on April 23 was a mere 3.47%. With locals saying they would not work with the newly elected officials. According to local media, police from Pristina used stun grenades and fired tear gas at protesters who had gathered in front of an administrative building, while Reuters reported that a police car had been set ablaze. RT Balkan reported that around a dozen people were admitted to hospital with minor injuries. Vučević told Think TV that what President Vučić had been warning the international community about for days and weeks has now turned out to be true, accusing Pristina of escalating tensions and instigating terror against Serbs. Someone needs to understand that what Albin Kurti is doing is leading us to red lines and to a complete collapse of dialogue and an escalation on the ground, Vučević said. Last Friday, Vučić declared that Serbia's refusal to acquiesce to the West's demands and recognize Kosovo's independence had made his country a target for foreign interference, but that he would never surrender and would never let them make Kosovo independent. Kosovo unilaterally declared independence in 2008 with the support of the US and many of its allies. The breakaway region is not recognized by several countries, including Russia and China, or by Serbia itself. The EU, however, has repeatedly demanded that Belgrade must recognize and normalize relations with Pristina if it wants to become a member of the bloc. Investigators find new evidence in Nord Stream sabotage, Der Spiegel. An email to rent the boat in the pipeline attacks came from Ukraine, according to investigators. Metadata from emails used to rent a yacht suspected of being involved in the explosions that damaged the Nord Stream pipelines transporting natural gas last year implicates Ukrainian nationals, Germany's Der Spiegel newspaper reported on Friday. In March, Der Spiegel claimed a yacht called Andromeda had allegedly been used by a team of divers to sabotage the Nord Stream pipelines. The publication cited the discovery of traces of explosives in the cabin of the vessel and fake identification documents that were used in the hiring of the boat. The outlet's most recent report indicates that metadata from an email sent to inquire about the renting of the yacht leads to Ukraine. The president of a presumed shell company through which the yacht was rented also lives in Kiev. According to German broadcasters NDR and WDR, as well as other media sources in the EU country. Der Spiegel also wrote on Friday that investigators were probing if the attack could have been undertaken by an independent group of Ukrainian commandos or if the sabotage would likely have been authorized by Kiev. The Ukrainian government, meanwhile, has denied all links to the explosions. To date, no group, state body or otherwise, has accepted responsibility for September's explosions, which came soon after Moscow reduced gas supplies to Europe following the implementation of a wave of Western sanctions on Russia over its military operation in Ukraine. In February, the Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist Seymour Hersh detailed in an extensive report evidence he claimed linked Washington to the attacks, which he said were conducted in tandem with figures in Norway. Moscow, which was accused of orchestrating the blasts as a false flag event by some in the West, on Thursday summoned the ambassadors of Germany, Sweden, and Denmark in protest over what the Russian Foreign Ministry called a complete lack of results in an investigation into the source of the blasts. It has been noted that these countries are not interested in establishing the true circumstances of this sabotage, Moscow's Foreign Ministry spokesperson said on Thursday, adding that investigators were delaying their efforts in attempting to conceal the tracks of the true perpetrators. German porn star faces Nazi salute trial. Melanie Mueller claims she was merely trying to excite the audience during a live music performance. German pop singer and former adult film star Melanie Mueller is facing charges from the prosecutor's office in Leipzig after she allegedly repeatedly displayed a Nazi salute during a public performance in the German city last year, local media outlets reported this week. Prosecutors have accused Mueller of performing the salute during a live concert in September after video footage distributed online appeared to show the 34-year-old repeatedly raising her arm in a manner similar to the fascist salute. The footage also purportedly shows members of the audience giving the Hitler salute, with some appearing to be heard shouting Sieg Heil. According to German media outlet RTL News, Mueller was charged on Wednesday for promoting unconstitutional and terrorist organizations. Police searched Mueller's residence in Leipzig last year, Tages Spiegel reported on Wednesday. The public prosecutor will now decide if it will bring formal charges against Mueller. If she is convicted, the entertainer faces a maximum of 3 years in prison. The former adult film star, who has previously performed in X-rated movies under the stage name Scarlett Young, has denied the accusations that have been made against her, and says that she was merely gesturing with her arms in a manner designed to get the audience excited during the event. She has also denied any links to extremist or far-right organizations. In August of last year, Mueller was the subject of criticism after she attended a boxing event held by a group with links to far-right extremism, according to Spiegel. She later explained her attendance by saying she was an enthusiastic boxing fan and that she was invited there to what she assumed was a charity event. It has been illegal to perform a Nazi salute in Germany since shortly after the Second World War. Visitors to the country are periodically arrested by authorities in the country for displaying the fascist gesture. In 2022, 3 English football fans were detained by police in Munich for showing a Nazi salute before a match in the city. Top U.S. general delivers sober take on Ukrainian ambitions. Kiev won't achieve its military objectives in the near term, Joint Chiefs Chair Milley has said. No military solution to the fighting in Ukraine will arise in the near future, Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, told reporters at the Pentagon on Thursday. Milley spoke alongside Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin after a virtual meeting of the Ukrainian Defense Contact Group, a collection of Western countries pledging to supply Kiev with weapons, equipment, and ammunition to use against Russia, while insisting they are not a party to the conflict. Ukraine's strategic objectives are to take all the territory occupied by Russia, where a couple 100,000 Russian troops are currently positioned, Milley told reporters. That might be achievable militarily, but probably not in the near term. That means fighting is going to continue. It's gonna be bloody. It's gonna be hard. And at some point both sides will either negotiate a settlement or they will come to a military conclusion, he said. Meanwhile, the U.S. will continue supporting Ukraine. Austin and Milley insisted throughout that Kiev was not losing. They painted the months-long battle for Bakhmut, which Ukraine lost, as a triumph of defense. They also claimed that the Ukrainians were using the US-supplied Patriot air defense systems very effectively. The Russian Defense Ministry said it had used Kinzhal hypersonic missiles to destroy a Patriot battery in the Ukrainian capital earlier this month. Milley also defended the decision not to send F-16 fighters to Ukraine sooner, arguing that the U.S. was not ramping up weapons deliveries as a result of public pressure, but always sending Kiev precisely what it needed at any given moment, using hardcore military analysis of cost, benefit, and risk. Deploying just 10 F-16 fighters would cost $2 billion, including operations and maintenance, Milley explained, while Russia has over 1,000 modern jets. So the decision was made to supply Kiev with air defenses first, and send the F-16s as a more long-term solution. It's going to take a considerable length of time to build up an air force that's the size and scope and scale that'll be necessary, Milley said. He also cautioned reporters to curb their enthusiasm, as there are no magic weapons. An F-16 is not, and neither is anything else. It has been known since February that Milley would retire at some point this year. On Thursday, U.S. President Joe Biden nominated as his replacement the current Air Force Chief of Staff, General Charles Q. Brown Jr.